Thank you. And with that being said, this event is being hosted by Worsta. Our mission is to help organizations maximize their use of the cloud. So we work side by side to help our clients make good technology decisions and grow their businesses in ways they wouldn't have the ability to do otherwise. This helps organizations develop cultures of continuous innovation powered by real-time collaboration. With all of that collaboration, however, organizations have a lot to worry about in terms of business continuity and having a backup plan in place. So that's why we're here today and why we've got our experts, Patrick and Pete, with us. Before we start, I do want to walk through exactly what business continuity is at a high level. So the purpose for today's webinar is just to highlight the importance of having a business continuity plan in place in the event of an interruption or outage, and how it can be a cost saver for your organization over time. As you may have seen, Microsoft recently had a cloud outage that took down its cloud platform, Azure, along with services such as Teams and Outlook. With those all down, users globally were not able to communicate to their clients and employees. So it's our priority to ensure organizations have a business continuity plan in place in the event something like this occurs again. So we'll be able to walk you through how business continuity operates and how to effectively set up your business continuity strategy. To begin, we'll have Pete help us identify and define business continuity versus disaster recovery.
Thanks, Daphne.
You're welcome.
So let's talk about the differences between business continuity and disaster recovery. Businesses can be impacted by disasters in many ways. As you know, forest fires, hurricanes, ice storms, even pandemics, as probably all of us have experienced, can stop your entire business, whereas business continuity can be impacted by a single simple IT system failure. In IT, in particular, disaster recovery is a subset of business continuity. Disaster recovery, as part of an overall business continuity strategy, is about restoring your IT systems and operations as efficiently as possible following a disaster. So disaster recovery includes the backup of systems and IT contingency methods for your organization's critical functions and applications. And contingency methods can include backup, identifying secondary physical locations to operate from offsite storage of critical data and systems, etc. In contrast, business continuity planning involves the actions your business must take if one or more failures in a system or process impacts your business functionality. And as I mentioned, that could just be one thing. Businesses need strategies in place, for example, to respond for when resources such as equipment, workforce, workplace third-party vendors, IT services, social media, and data are unavailable. In general, there are three areas that need to be covered in a business continuity plan. You have to think about communications, workforce response, and your IT recovery. We will talk about the IT recovery piece today to help you understand the capabilities in the cloud and how utilizing Google will solve some of these challenges. So with that said, Patrick, I'm really excited to hear about the solution of using Workspace as a BCP tool for your existing IT email and collaboration.
Thank you, Pete, and I'm happy and excited to talk about it. It's really a fantastic sort of solution that Google can provide. So let's jump into that a little bit. As Pete talked about, having a BCP plan in place for your IT infrastructure, critical to ensure the continuity of business in the event of a systems outage, failure, etc. We've seen a couple of, we'll call them Microsoft outages, things like that, but Google can provide a robust way for you to have a email and collaboration failover or hot swappable system, so to speak, alongside your IT infrastructure. Having backup or a failover system for email, at least early on in my career, is not something that we really thought about, right? System went down, okay, you pick up the phone, you call who you have to. In today's world, everybody being remote, it is more critical today than ever. Most of, or a lot of, our company data is in the cloud, in OneDrive and Dropbox and Box and systems like that. So ensuring that you have access and availability of that data is paramount. So even if you're not thinking about using Workspace as a a primary solution for your collaboration needs. As I said, it can serve as a hot swappable system. Switching over to a system like that, and the implementation of a system like that to have that failover is pretty straightforward. There's typically sort of a long discovery period, et cetera. And then, in terms of how that gets set up, it can be something that we, replicate all of your data from. It can be something that we only, sync over 30 days of data, things like that. Additionally, introducing Google Cloud as an identity provider and as a system into your infrastructure and your IT stack will provide some other benefits other than just the failover capabilities that you have in Workspace, GCP, et cetera. Things like Google Chrome. Chrome is the dominant browser for the most part in organizations. And by introducing Google Cloud and Cloud Identity, you are able to now enforce from an administration and IT perspective cloud-based Chrome policies, right? So no longer do you need local GPOs or policy enforcement from Active Directory. If you are using Google Chrome as your primary browser, it opens up a tremendous window for you to be able to manage all of those services in the cloud. Unmanaged business accounts is another sort of key area of one of those organic benefits that you get about introducing Google Cloud in your environment. And then lastly, GCP, Drive data, et cetera. If you have engineers and development teams that are using cloud services, maybe you're an AWS heavy shop or an Azure heavy shop, or dabbling and looking at GCP as a hybrid solution, allowing or providing your engineering development teams a managed identity that they can use in those cloud services is very important.
Awesome. Hey, Patrick, not to cut in, but it looks like we got a couple questions in the chat here. One from Lauren. Can you explain the unmanaged business accounts?
Excellent. Great question, Lauren. Thank you for asking. So unmanaged accounts happen when your organization, so your primary email domain, right, your collaboration domain, we'll call it domain.com. That's a Microsoft shop. They're on 365, no affiliation with Google Workspace whatsoever. If one of your users went to a service like Google Drive and they don't have an account today, they are able to sign up for Google Drive and other Google services using your company branded email domain. So suddenly I have a consumer account that is patrick@domain.com. It is completely unmanaged by my company because they have no visibility or insight into that account. And because those services are free, I can be storing company data in those accounts. I can be using GCP services against those accounts and things like that. So by introducing Google Cloud Identity, Workspace, you are able to, through the admin console, have a macro level view into anybody that may have set up those consumer accounts, gain control over those accounts, and gain control of your data, more importantly.
Cool. It also looks like we've got another question. How difficult is it to deploy a BCP or business continuity plan solution like this?
For Workspace, that's a great timing on the question. Let's, Andrew, switch over to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit about a use case here, and we'll call them Acme. This is a legitimate engagement that we completed last year. Can't use real company name, but we completed this deployment in 2022. And really goes in line with what we were just talking about, right? They are a heavy Microsoft 365 shop, over 20,000 users. On the tail of another Microsoft outage, their IT leadership team was, prompted to look for a backup solution for a subset of their users. They came to us and we presented this solution to them, and today they have their Workspace environment running in parallel to their 365 environment for redundancy. During the course of that migration, so to answer your question, Daphne, and whoever presented that question, it can be as little as a few weeks, depending on how light you want to go with that redundancy model, or it could be a few months, depending on how heavy you want to go with that model, right? And some of the factors that go into that, do we want to do identity integration, right? So for this customer that we worked with, being that they were a heavy Microsoft shop, they have Azure Identity in place as their identity provider. So we worked through a sprint to ensure all of their objects from Azure are synced over to Google Workspace. And that's done through just the Azure Marketplace app. There's a Google Workspace connector in the Azure Marketplace app that will allow you to provision user accounts and groups directly into Workspace from Azure. We also work through Sprint to enable single sign-on through Azure, right? So in the event of a failover, what their IT teams have to do is basically just light up the app via a group membership in their SSO portal in Azure, and suddenly that tile will become available for Google Workspace, and their users have been trained to go and look for that, or in the event of the outage, etc. So some of those things factor in depending on how much integration that you want to have. So again, anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. There are other parameters that we can include in that, things like how much mail data do you need visible or accessible in that redundant account. Do you want 30 days, 60 days, all mail from all time, right? Those things will factor into not only the initial setup, but what is going to be required to maintain those systems and keep them in sync. Great questions, thank you. As I mentioned, we sync from Azure in this particular case, but you can sync from other identity platforms as well. Certainly on-prem Active Directory, Azure, Okta, OneLogin, any of those identity systems that are out there can be used to feed into Workspace and create your user objects there. Not to mention the fact that Google Workspace in and of itself can be your SSO provider. Google does play in that space as well. Just just as Okta and OneLogin, Google can also serve and provide those services. One of the things that we did establish during this customer use case is periodic fire drills, right? So we would simulate a cutover activity. We would go through the steps, the motions, cut over MX records, things like that. Get users familiar and familiar with the process, so that when and if that does occur, it is not foreign to them, right? So it's definitely something that we recommend along the way. Be forewarned though, once users start using Workspace, we have found that users tend to like it. So while it's scary, on the onset, hey, I don't want to use Workspace, I've always used Outlook. Once you start to see some use in Workspace, it can generate some noise for IT. Hey, I want to use this, I want to use that. In this particular case, it really drove inspiration for this customer to start looking at some of the services that Google offers in the classroom space, right? So they have taken the opportunity, now that they have a Workspace in their environment, to roll out internal L&D, learning and development, based on Google Classroom. And they've built a nice, robust classroom from that. So a little bit about that use case. And then lastly, just to elaborate a little bit on those additional benefits, right? So the peace of mind with benefits, right? So you get all of this great redundancy. And I mentioned a couple of these already, but you do get benefits of being able to manage other aspects of Google that your users are likely using, right? I mentioned, Google Chrome. There are other areas, things like your business analytics tools, right? So is your marketing team using Google Analytics for anything? Are they using Google Marketing or Google Business Tools? Depending on how those were set up, those could be currently unmanaged by your IT systems. And given the importance of things like AdWords, et cetera, those should be IT controlled. And this starts to set you down that path of gaining control of all of those Google services. GCP account management, I mentioned a little bit as well. And we are fully committed to making sure that companies have hybrid cloud strategies. Again, if you're heavily invested in AWS and/or Azure, Google Cloud provides a great hybrid strategy there. So starting to control those identities that your developers, engineering teams may be using in GCP as well.
Yeah. Let me interject here really quick as well. You mentioned GCP. Managing cloud identities for your developers and engineers, that's awesome. A lot of companies are dabbling in GCP services today, which totally makes sense. We're going to be doing a deeper dive into business continuity strategies using GCP in an upcoming session. So, shameless plug, but if anybody wants to hear it, that should be coming up soon. But aside from Workspace, could GCP alternatively provide a backup path for organizations that may not be using Google services today?
Pete, great question and great plug for your next webinar. Definitely, yeah, there are definitely ways to, aside from your email collaboration, needs for redundancy, et cetera, cold storage, nearline storage, those areas. There are API methods. There are open source utilities out there in the ecosystem that I use, day to day, that makes it fairly easy for an IT admin to replicate a data set from an existing solution. So say OneDrive or Dropbox or Box. If your teams are dependent on the data that sits on these storage and collaboration systems, OneDrive goes down, basically, Google Drive went down today, right? We wouldn't have had access to the presentation that we were planning to deliver today, things like that, right? So using APIs, open source tools, you can absolutely create batch jobs, cron jobs that, for example, back up your entire Dropbox data set into a Google Cloud storage bucket. Absolutely. Great question.
Awesome.
And without plugging, I'll plug in anything for myself, Pete. I'll ask you a question, I guess. Just as important as all the technical is, and I love brainstorming and whiteboarding on all of these solutions and making all of this stuff work. I know that I can only go as far as the policies and procedures that the company allows me to do. So can you talk a little bit about that, I guess?
Yeah. So this is kind of the dirty details in business continuity. If you haven't put together a plan and really documented how you're going to recover from business continuity issues, you're probably set up for failure. And everybody here probably knows this, but the reality is there's at least 3 areas to focus on when building a business continuity plan. We covered a few areas today in the IT infrastructure and cloud recovery areas, but when you are establishing these programs, there's a massive project wrapped around that to document the processes and confirm their functionality with all of your business areas. Each department really has to be involved in this. This means testing and verification of your capabilities, and it includes how you bring your IT systems back online following a disaster. This is where DR comes into play and where the overlap is. The recovery strategy typically involves the BC and IT teams working hand in hand. I don't want to miss these other 2 areas, so I'll cover these quickly. The second area is communications, and this is really, really paramount. When a crisis occurs, communication with your employers, with your employees, users, and shareholders is critical. Legal and human resources play a key role in ensuring active, consistent, timely communications between your organization and your staff. And there's also regulatory needs that you might need to address. But for external communications, I'll give you an example. Social media is a vital tool to provide timely updates to outside stakeholders and users. When an incident arises, many users turn to social media first to acknowledge and get updates. But for example, if Netflix were to go down, users won't go to netflix.com for information. They'll go to Netflix's social accounts and probably beat them up there. So it's important from a communications perspective, make sure you take control of your message and have a plan in place for responding on social media for all the different types of business continuity infractions that might occur. The last area is around workforce response and how your employees, how your vendors, how your partners respond to things. Workforce response is equally important in the event of a crisis. Your employees should know who to contact and what is expected from them, especially what to avoid doing. Don't respond to media people when they contact you. Tell them to go talk to your media representatives. For example, it's your responsibility, obviously, to keep your employees informed and educated on these matters. And businesses, as they grow, threats evolve. It's critical for employees to be involved in the business continuity plan. Keep them updated about the event and your organization's BC plan and any changes in policies. Worcester can help you build these plans. And we focus on these items to help establish a plan that is well thought out in each aspect of your business. Ensuring there are alternatives to service outages is really important. Sometimes that means working from paper. So kind of an unfortunate part.
I don't like that. Excellent.
Awesome. Well, just to piggyback off of Pete, Worcester is here to help you evaluate how Google Cloud and Workspace can help your business with its expert, our team of Google Cloud specialists. So we'll be in touch soon after today's session to provide you with the resources you need to get started with all of that. So with that being said, we can go ahead and jump into our Q&A session. I know we had a couple of questions already posted in the chat, but if you have any questions, feel free to continue to do that or come off mute. We do just ask that you raise your hand if you have any questions, just so we know who's asking.
Excellent. David posted a question. Their existing workspace customer, I know you have to run here in a minute. Happy to follow up with you directly and talk about your current environment, your landscape, and what you're looking to do to potentially fail over to workspace and look into services. So noted. Thank you, David, for attending today. We'll be in touch.
Any other questions?
As everybody thinks about some questions, I like to fill the time in a little bit. So I'll ad lib a little bit on and I know I missed the prompt actually when I was talking about sort of some of those fringe benefits, the organic benefits that you get about introducing Google Workspace into your environment. And we are in the midst of doing this ourselves, right? And that is adopting the zero trust model for network access, right? So if you're dependent on traditional VPN clients, right? Your workforce is remote and using, that old school Cisco AnyConnect or whatever it's called, right? Those are not fun. It's not a great user experience. It's gonna, eventually be hard. Can be hard to support, deploy, etc. By introducing cloud identity, you are one step closer to Google's zero trust model, right? Where it's a VPN solution, a VPN-less solution, where you are providing access to the applications and resources in your tech stack, and checking each and every aspect of that user that's going into that service, right? So you're verifying the user account and their authentication, role-based access, things like that. You are verifying that they are coming in from an approved device that meets all the requirements that you want for accessing your data, right? Modern OS, encryption, things like that. That can apply to not only Google services, but your cloud stack in general. So BeyondCorp, it's if you're not familiar with BeyondCorp, certainly a good read and sort of Google's journey on zero trust and how BeyondCorp came to be as a product. Shameless plug for BeyondCorp. I matched you, Pete. I got the shameless plugs too.
All right.
Not a lot of questions coming in today, so maybe if Daphne, Andrew, I'll hand back to you. I think we had scheduled for 45 minutes, but if we don't have any questions,
yeah, let me pose this last question to the group here, since everybody's still here. From everyone's perspective, is there a scenario or a situation that you're currently struggling with or you want to solve? Maybe toss it out here at us and we can talk about some capabilities that might help resolve your problem.
Good question. I'll second that with, was anybody impacted by the recent Microsoft outage?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Maybe that's
right.
good. Hope that's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
We have a really smart team here.
Yes, absolutely.
Everybody's figured out their business continuity.
Excellent.
Well, it's awesome we have everybody here. I'm glad everyone showed up. From a security and compliance perspective, I'm here to help out. If you have questions about aligning with standards or frameworks and how to deal with some of these things that are more compliance related or even setting some standards around things, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm obviously in this deck here, and I'm happy to help out however I can.
And I second that on the workspace side. Any questions that you may have, if you're evaluating, thinking about moving to workspace as a primary or as a redundant tool. We didn't really talk about this, but workspace, we have a customer that's even offering workspace as a choice of collaboration tolerance. So it's a very interesting model as well, right? So they ask users, Mac or PC or iPhone or Android phone, and do you want to use 365 or Workspace, which is a really interesting setup. But if you have any questions on Workspace, if you're looking to evaluate Workspace, if you'd like to get involved with a trial and sort of kick the tires and see what it has to offer, or just get a demo, one-on-one sort of a 60-minute demo on all the security features that Workspace has to offer, we will absolutely be available for you. With that said, happy to give everybody some time back. Daphne, I'll hand it back to you to close us up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Pete. Couldn't have said it better myself. So that's all the time we have for today. Gave y'all some time back. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we look forward to working with all y'all.